to the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Now let's do this.
It's just two men cheating the system by actually getting paid to talk sports.
You volunteered, didn't you? We're paying you, aren't we?
Good thing they like being heard, because we don't pay them that much.
It's like people only do things because they get paid, and that's just really sad.
The first of the duo is never shy about letting you know where he stands.
Okay, hot take, but I like your confidence.
The other promises he'll grow on you with time.
It's like a new pair of underwear. At first it's constrictive, but after a while it becomes a part of you.
Together, they're bringing you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and their opinions on sports topics from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
Patrick Wheeler.
Let's stomp these dudes.
And Zach Lancaster.
Everyone is stupid except me.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it, I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa. Everybody got opinions, let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'ma rock that. Saying you the best, stop that, phony, I am not that. What are y'all doing out here? What are y'all doing out here? Maybe you should.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. On this Thursday, Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster coming your way. Show today brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza on the intersection highways 177 and 33. They're open at 5 a.m. Monday to Friday and 6 a.m. Saturdays and Sundays. They stay open until 11 every night, so you have plenty of time still. Go in there, enjoy all that Ampride has to offer. Big-time deli with all kinds of different foods. And then you have 24-hour pay at the pumps, the next top-tier gasoline. Everything you can need in your one-stop shop there at Ampride Travel Plaza in Perkins. Zach, what's going on today, man?
Not much. Got out of the house for the first time since, November 6th.
Ooh,
Went to pump my own gas. Yeah, pumped my gas for the first time in God knows how long. So it was a good day today, you know. I got a little tired. I now know my going out limitations. But we had to go to the grocery store and pick up a few things, and I'll tell you, if you guys are looking for a good time to go to the grocery store with not a lot of people, it would be about 10:45 in the morning.
That's a golden time, 10:45 in the morning to do it.
Absolutely.
Not deal with traffic at the grocery store. There you go. Always good advice when Zach hops on. We have a lot to get to here today on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Oklahoma State football just a couple days away from their next matchup, and same with Oklahoma State basketball. Big trade last night in the NBA. I'm a former Oklahoma City player. We'll talk about all of that. The NFL, a lot of storylines coming out of there too from yesterday's game. By the way, Zach, with that game happening yesterday in the Steelers and the Ravens at like 2:40, I think it was the kickoff time. Are you a fan of the whole occasional like Wednesday afternoon type games?
I love random games. You know, like that was excuse me. When I was in the hospital, the Tuesday night and Wednesday night action kept me going.
Oh yeah.
So I'm absolutely a fan of a random, like a random Wednesday afternoon or Tuesday night or Thursday game, and that's, I think that this season, for as hectic and as crazy as it's been, and I completely understand the Steelers' frustrations. This is the second time that they've had to have a game pushed back due to another team, and the league is like, well, sorry, we're just going to keep pushing it back. And then you get Roger Goodell coming out yesterday or the day before saying that it doesn't matter if another Denver Broncos situations happen, we're not going to push the game back. But then you have the Steelers and Ravens playing on a Wednesday at 2:40 in the afternoon. But I think that what this season has done is shown the league that not every single game needs to be played on a Sunday with with one game on Monday. I think that there's a chance we could see, if teams have a bye week next week, I think you could see the league and teams teaming up like, okay, well, these 6 teams have bye weeks going into next week. Let's pair them up, and we can have 2 on a Tuesday, 2 on a Wednesday, 2 on a Thursday, and then that allows, or coming out of a bye week or something like that, because it allows the league to get more money, when there's nothing going on. Because I'm sure, if you put a marquee matchup on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night, that they're going to dominate that market. It does, because that's a big thing.
Well, you're never going to get anybody complain about an extra NFL game, especially during the week, and it can be a bad matchup and you're still going to get people to tune in because it's the NFL. So, and I'm really a big fan of the Wednesday game, the Tuesday games we've had earlier this year. It's because it just kind of breaks things up. You don't expect to have an NFL game at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday or 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, and it's really cool to get that going on. I think it's interesting. You get a lot of eyes on one game, and I've also always been in the camp of we should do, like, we start the NFL season with 2 Monday night games. And I think that should become like a permanent thing, because it's like you said, you have 100 games going on Sunday all at the same time. And it takes a lot to be able to, to tune into all of them and at least get to see some of all of them and take snippets away from each one. So I'm all for it. Let's spread them out a little bit. And I know there's always TV and contract issues and all that stuff that, and plus, if you think about it, what is Sunday in America? It's NFL day, right? I mean, that's just what it's drawn to. It's always been that way. So it's something that they don't want to break up too much. But yeah, I'm a fan. I really enjoyed it. We're gonna have a lot more coming up on that game. Get some takeaways there, because one of the biggest takeaways obviously is the Steelers are still undefeated, but are they the best team? Because we saw last night they ended up playing against a third stringer after Robert Griffin III got hurt. And then they bring in a third-string quarterback who a lot of people had never heard of, and for the Ravens, and then still barely won. So we'll talk about that. James Washington had a big couple of plays in that game for the Steelers, and then on the other end you had Hollywood Brown. So you had kind of some bedlam going on in that ball game, Steelers-Ravens. Coming up in just a little bit, we'll get into that. I want to take a look at we're just a couple days away here from Oklahoma State and TCU. Speaking of that, we'll also have Frank Bonner joining us at 3:25 from the Tulsa World. Usually comes on Tuesdays. I've pushed him to Thursday. Appreciate him, being flexible with us. He's going to come on with us to talk about OSU basketball and football. But looking ahead at TCU, I think the first thing we have to do, Zach, and it's really, you look at Texas Tech and you say, okay, they do, offensively, I think they still have some firepower. We saw that. And that's, their team offensively has kind of been poo-pooed on this year. But defensively, there was a lot of concerns coming into that game, I think, for Texas Tech, because they haven't been able to stop a lot of offenses this year. And that was the case, again, really with Oklahoma State. With that being said, I think that when you see a performance like, for instance, that Dez gave, running the football, you kind of have to, when you move over to TCU, you kind of have to start managing expectations a little bit more. It's so easy that when a running back explodes or a wide receiver explodes or whatever, skill position players goes crazy in a game, has a really, really good performance, you all of a sudden, depending on the matchup, you come into the next game, and if it's kind of not near the same or just doesn't look the same, then people immediately are like, okay, that was just kind of a one-time thing. But I think right here, you have to manage some expectations, because TCU's defense is better than Texas Tech, and Texas Tech's defense really wasn't that good. I mean, if we're being completely honest, they got some good players, but overall, and it was a combination of I think a decent offensive line performance from Oklahoma State, Dez refusing to be tackled and trucking guys, and at the same time you had a nice little mixture of Texas Tech having a hard time tackling, and also overall just not a very skilled defense. So with that being said, and it's not to talk about like, oh my gosh, Dez didn't have that good a performance, because he did. That was incredible. I think he's going to have a really good game here against TCU, but I think we have to manage expectations, and then look at the workload is obviously not going to be as much. If a guy gets 38 touches in a game, you would certainly hope he turns it into a pretty big performance, and that's just not going to be the case here. So they're a lot better against the run. So I'm not expecting like a huge day. He's got to be respectable, though. As I said yesterday, over 100 total yards is what I'm thinking we're going to see out of Desmond Jackson. I really am going to be curious how much he actually does play, because I think that Mike Gundy wants to stick with the hot hand here, and I believe he should, rightfully so. I don't think this is something where you would just immediately thrust LD or Chuba right back into it. You would kind of work them in with Dez, and you may see a little bit of a three-headed monster here, depending on who's healthy and who's not. Or you could see a possible split backfield. And before it's all said and done, who knows? I mean, if Dez comes out and he's still running like crazy and he's still running hard and downhill and not going down on first contact, well, he may actually get a big workload again. So it could be a lot of different things there. But I am saying to all the Oklahoma State fans out there, let's be sure to manage some expectations on the ground against TCU.
No, absolutely. And you see, you can go back. We hit on it yesterday with the Steelers. You go back to last year when Roethlisberger went down, and then when Rudolph got put into concussion protocol, they sent out Devlin Hodges, and he had a couple of good first games. It wasn't he didn't go out there and throw for 400 yards. But he did enough. He did a little bit more than enough, and Steeler fans were like, "Oh my gosh, forget Mason Rudolph. This is the replacement." And then Hodges goes down with an injury, and Rudolph comes back in, and then you just never, Hodges is an off performance, and it just doesn't, it doesn't work. I don't think that's going to be the case for Dez. I don't think he's going to put up 230 some odd rushing yards. We talked about it yesterday, and I think he's going to have between 100 and 150 rushing yards, probably closer to the middle than he will to 150 or 100. But I think that he's going to be good. I also think that it all depends on if Chuba's ready to go. It depends on how banged up he was. He's been banged up all year. If he's ready to go, then I think you're probably going to see more touches from him, and also if LD is ready to go. Because when it comes down to it, Dez is still the third string back.
Right.
He's really good. He proved that he's the future of that running back room. Him and obviously you got Dominic Richardson, who shows promise. But if both Chuba and LD are ready to go, then you could see maybe 10 touches, 10 to 12 touches from Dez, if that. And to get over 100 yards for that, I mean, he showed that he could pick up some good yardage from time to time. But if we take a look, and I'm like I mentioned to you before the show, I'm having some Wi-Fi issues. Here we go. We got it pulled up. You look at what TCU has done, and they're giving up about 134.5 rushing yards per game. So if you let's just say Chuba and LD are ready to go, then it's going to be a little tight with Dez, getting his touches and picking up his yards. But that doesn't mean that Saturday was a fluke and that he's not good. He is good, and I think he's going to get some touches on Saturday. It'll all depend on if Chuba's ready to go. Because if it's just LD and Dez, then Dez is going to get a lot of touches. He might get more than half the touches. But if Chuba and LD are ready to go, or even if it's just Chuba and LD sets out, but if it's just one of them, then Dez is going to get his touches.
Yeah, if they're all three healthy, or at least, like I said, good to go, then they're going to see some action, all three of them. And I think that Dez still, he's forced the action. I mean, he's forced his name back in the conversation, no matter who's healthy. So he's going to get some touches. He's not going to be just put out of this offense and moved out of this offense.
No, he earned his touches.
Yeah, no, he absolutely did. That was and he earned a start. So we'll see, and I think that first series will be important.
Yeah.
When he goes out there and does get those first snaps, what he can do with them. And when I talked about it, and you mentioned the yards that they give up. And TCU, as we said, been somewhat stingy against the run at times, much better than Texas Tech. But I think that if that is the case, and if they're not necessarily able to get a lot going on the ground, at least as much as last week, then all of a sudden you need Spencer to step up, and in a big way.
Well,
and I'm not completely confident he can do that right now.
Well, and you go back, you hit on Texas Tech, flip the script, go to the other side of the ball. I think you look at the defense. And the defense went into Texas Tech relying too much on the fact that they're one of the best defenses in the conference. And I think that came out to bite them. I'm not saying that they set back and they rested on their laurels and they said, you know what, this is a team that's not that good. They haven't had a lot of offensive success this year, and so we're good enough that we don't have to play as hard as we have in games past. I don't think that was the case, but I think that they kind of overlooked Texas Tech a little bit. And you go you go back to Kansas State, you go to OU, you go to Texas. What is one of the main aspects of an offense that has really burnt Oklahoma State's defense this year? It's a running game.
Yeah.
TCU has a running quarterback. I mean, he's not picking up 150, 200 yards a game, but he's getting anywhere between 75 and 100, a little over 100 every game. You know, he's done really well. He's kind of like Spencer, probably a run-first quarterback. He's young, but he has, as a team, they've gotten close to 2,000 rushing yards this year, and they're averaging right around 200 rushing yards a game. And we saw against Texas Tech, big play after big play after big play for touchdowns against Oklahoma State's defense. So that is absolutely something that Jim Knowles and Joe Bob Clements and Greg Richmond, the defensive line coaches, that's absolutely something that they've worked on this year, because the Oklahoma State offense has to be able to run the ball. The Oklahoma State defense has to be able to stop the ball, or TCU is going to put up some points.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. And we know with dual threat with Duggan a quarterback, and at the same time, I think that he sort of limits the not he, I should say, but the offense is somewhat limited because he is literally everything they do.
Absolutely.
For Oklahoma State's defense, you're going to have a spy on him, I would think, most of the game to help try to alleviate that and just kind of deal with what comes off. If you can limit him, you deal with the rest. But I'm completely with you. I think this is an Oklahoma State defense that has to be better, plain and simple. And they played really well for the most part of the season. We know that. And you go back and you look at the Texas Tech game, and there's a lot of times where you're like, man, this is you kind of got the whole when they started out with Oklahoma. I know it's a different offense, but that was the easiest we'd seen the ball moved on Oklahoma State's defense. And then when Texas Tech was able to put up a lot of points too, you're like, okay, where are we headed with this defense right now? And I think the reason why people get nervous with that is because if the defense is not carrying the load, the offense hasn't proven enough this year that they can do that. So,
right.
They aren't going to be able to make up for that at this point. And that's where you have, the worry. But, again, I think this is an Oklahoma State defense that's ready. We heard in some of the talk this week with players that this is a bounce-back opportunity. They want to make sure that everyone realizes they're still the team to watch in terms of defense. And I think that's the case because they still have everybody out there pretty much good to go. I think they've stayed fairly healthy, this year, and especially at this time. It's not easy to be healthy at this
Absolutely.
time. So it's good to see that as well. It's not a cakewalk. TCU is not a cakewalk. Don't let the record fool you. At 4-4, and they come off of a big win against Kansas, and I know it's Kansas, but that's always a nice little momentum boost when you can just destroy a team like that. And they're coming into this game, still reeling off that one, feeling good. So it's not one of those games where I think that last I checked, Oklahoma State was a 2.5-point favorite, and that might move to 3 before it's all said and done. But I've seen right now so far, Zach, a lot of people are hitting this, taking TCU already at plus 2.5.
It's actually gone down to 2.
2, wow, yeah. It's a fairly even matchup. I mean, it really is. I mean, if you look at throughout the, position by position, all that type of stuff, it's got a lot of similarities in this matchup. So I think there definitely is a lot of people that are jumping on TCU to win outright even, but also to cover because that's a really small spread right there.
Yeah, it is. And that's. I think that Oklahoma State has enough talent. The Oklahoma State's defense is obviously better than TCU, and the way the defense is played this year, if they go into it understanding that TCU can hurt them more than Texas Tech could, or more than Kansas, what's it come down to? It's not going to be the running game. It's not going to be Duggan, passing versus running. It's not going to be the TCU defense. It's going to be Gary Patterson, because Gary Patterson is a really good coach. He knows how to take a team that has deficiencies, and he knows how to turn them into a solid team. And like you said, I get that TCU is 4-4, but you have to for TCU, you have to overlook the record. It doesn't matter what it is. TCU has enough to jump up and bite you. So this Oklahoma State team has to come in. They got to go into that game understanding that they can't just set back. Because I truly believe that that's what happened against Texas Tech. I understand that Rodarius went down with a minor ankle sprain. I understand that they didn't have Tevin Jenkins on the offensive side. The offensive line was still good. The offensive line won the issue. Dez could run the ball, but the defense got gashed running the ball. They hit him deep a few times. So I think that they went into that game thinking it's Texas Tech. It's not that big of a deal. We should be able to coast. If they do that against TCU is a better team and they'll get beat.
Get him on Twitter at ZLancaster91. I'm at the Patty Wheels. When we come back on the afternoon sports drive, Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World is going to join us and hop in on the conversation. Oklahoma State football and basketball covers it for Tulsa World. We'll get into all of that with him. Show today brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza in Perkins. Back after this.
You can call till your voice is running out, but I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. I'm somewhere far away where you can't bring me down, so I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. Yeah, run it back, tell them what I'm coming at. I was on
It's the afternoon sports drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Show today brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza. Check them out in Perkins. And joining us now, Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World. It's been a while, Frank. Appreciate you coming back on with us. How's it going, man?
Going well. Getting ready to gear up and leave for Fort Worth tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're heading out there. TCU should be a really good matchup. That's what we were talking about before you hopped on a little bit, is looking ahead at TCU and kind of talking about the difference in what Texas Tech threw at Oklahoma State compared to what TCU is about to throw at them. But, before we get to TCU, what did you think of Oklahoma State's response? They ultimately come away with that big win against Texas Tech.
I think it was big for their offense. I know, there's been talk about the defense struggle, giving up all those yards and all those points. And I think we're at a point in the season where we kind of know what this defense is, even though that they struggled against Oklahoma and they struggled against Texas Tech. But I think it was a major confidence booster for this offense to know that they can still put up 50 points in a game when we haven't really seen that version of them at all this season. So I think it was huge for their offense.
Yeah, that was something we've wanted to see all year for sure, too. And how encouraging was it to see someone like Desmond Jackson just get an opportunity and then go off like he did?
Yeah, it was real encouraging, especially when you're down 2 running backs, and if you don't really know anything about him, which a lot of fans, didn't, you think that, wow, we're going to really struggle running the ball, and then you've got, Tevin Jenkins is out, and so you go into that game like, man, what's this run game going to look like? And then he pops for 235. Just to know that, as injury prone as this team has been, especially on that offensive line, you can still get the job done with a third-string running back who really, he's a third-string running back because he's behind L.D. Brown and Chuba Hubbard, but he looks like he can be a starter for OSU, moving forward if he needs to be.
Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World joining us here on the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Yeah, he just, I think it secured a lot of people's thoughts and maybe, got people looking forward to the future of the run game when Chuba's out, knowing, okay, we're going to be all right. We have a guy like Desmond who proved that he's ready to go, and he ran hard. And Mike Gundy says that he's starting, and he earned a start coming up against TCU. And while that may be the case, if they do get Chuba and LD back, at least in some capacity, how much do you think that Desmond actually does play in this one?
I think he plays. I think he plays a nice number of carries on this one, because even if you do get Hubbard and LD back, Hubbard has kind of been banged up all year, so you don't want to give him his typical workload when you don't necessarily have to, because you've got a Desmond Jackson. And so I think it would be more, if we saw either one of them, I think LD Brown would be the one, getting more carries than Hubbard. And then, Desmond Jackson would also have more carries than Hubbard. I think Hubbard would, of the three, assuming all three of them play in this case scenario, I think Hubbard would be the one to have the less carries of the three, just because he's kind of been constantly banged up throughout the, most of the year.
And with that being said, and that being true about Chuba, first of all, does he play another game this season for Oklahoma State? And does it make sense for him personally to play another game for Oklahoma State?
I never know what the answer to that is in terms of will he play another game or whatever. But does it make sense for him to play another game? Me personally, I don't think so. Just because I don't think anybody really knows how banged up he is. But the fact that you are banged up, you've got an NFL career ahead of you. The season, and I hate to advocate for quote unquote players so-called quitting on their teammates or anything like that. But looking at your future, if you aren't 100% healthy, I wouldn't play.
No, and I think we've seen that a lot. I mean, these guys, especially now, could possibly be there's a lot of money at stake for some of these guys. So they're they're carrying around a business even right now in the college game. But with Chuba, as far as what he's shown this year, and I've said all season long, even before the season, I thought he had a few things specifically really needed to kind of improve on a little bit for his draft stock. And we've mentioned that you and I had talked about this a bit before as well, but overall this season, and if Chuba doesn't play another game, has his draft stock ultimately dropped, do you think, in the NFL, like significantly, or is he still going to find himself maybe where he was going to be picked a year ago?
Well, I definitely know that I don't think it increased. I don't think it went up in any fashion, but it's obviously more likely that it dropped. But I don't know if it necessarily dropped significantly, because if you're looking at a running back or a prospect, any athlete in their potential success in the NFL, if you're looking at him and you realize that he has been banged up this year, and which is why he hasn't been able to get some of the breaks that he usually gets, looking at last year, and the fact that this offensive line has struggled, if NFL personnel, I'm looking at that as the full package, saying that these factors also played a role into why he hasn't been the running back he was last year. So I think you have to look at both of these years, in one, this year and last year. And I think he did enough last year to show that if he's healthy and he has a solid offensive line, he can be the running back that you thought he was. And so I don't think he's going to drop significantly. He may drop a little bit just because of the production level and, other teams that are doing well, they get more national attention and, so-and-so. We saw it happen with Wisconsin and so on. So I think he may have dropped a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. As far as running backs, I wanted to ask you as well when we were talking about them. But with this season, to you, is where would you put Breece Hall? I mean, is he the best running back in college football, or is he top 3, top 5? Where do you have him specifically?
I would put him top 3. In terms of the best running back in college football, right now I think so. Yes, I think he's the best running back in college football, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to have the best NFL career, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, NFL personnel, they're the ones who get paid the top dollar to evaluate all that.
Yep.
But I do think he's the best running back in college football. Only time can really tell if he will be the best running back to come out of this, this draft stock.
Yeah, I know it's hard to pick between him and Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. Man, there's some good ones this year. So as far as Oklahoma State's offensive line, you talked about it there. The big news this week, find out that Tevin Jenkins is ultimately kind of opted out for the rest of the season to get ready for the NFL draft, and he was dealing with the back injury. But did you think that his decision there made sense?
Yeah. I was asked this yesterday that did it surprise me? And in hindsight, no, it didn't surprise me. I didn't expect it, but now that he made that decision, like I said, the same thing we talked about just a second ago with Chuba Hubbard. If you aren't 100% healthy, then there aren't many positives for you to continue playing. And so He dealt with the little injury, getting pulled out of the game at Bedlam and everything. And so if he's not 100% healthy, why push it? Just get ready for the draft. So I think it makes sense.
Let's look ahead to TCU. Is this a possible bounce back spot here for this Oklahoma State defense? Like you said, they have had their issues a little bit these last few games, and Texas Tech, they were thankful that the offense played ultimately as well as they did. But is this a bounce back spot for them?
Yeah, I think it is. And when Tanner McAllister, when he spoke with the media the other day, he talked about it. He said we were going into this game kind of with a chip on our shoulder to let everybody know that we still are the defense that people thought we were, earlier this year. So I do think this will be a bounce back game for them, especially, the fact that this is back-to-back weeks where they've, given up big yards and a lot of points. I think they're coming into this game, kind of the way that they came into this season, right? Looking that they've got to prove something, and they came out, with a lot of confidence, really strong-minded. I think we're going to see that similar mindset in this game that we saw them start the season with, because, there are people questioning, were they overhyped and everything, and I don't think they were. They had a couple bad games, but even against Texas Tech, they still had, 3 turnovers. So I think they'll come out and they'll be fine.
As far as the offense, is this another game against a TCU defense, which has plenty of differences compared to Texas Tech, but is this another game where the offense could put up 40-plus points?
Yeah, I think I have them around 35, but I do think this is another game where the offense can show that, hey, we still got some things cooking. We've still got a Tylan Wallace. We've still got a dynamic, Spencer Sanders. I mean, you guys still have some weapons. And I think this is another game for them to show that, last week wasn't a fluke. Like, we can do this consistently, even though they haven't done it consistently all year. I think this is a game to show that, and it'll be good for Casey Dunn, right? In his first year, he's had a really rough first year as coordinator with the injuries and everything. I think it'd be really good for Casey Dunn for them to string together back-to-back games of some really solid offense.
You said around 35 there. So what is your score prediction for this one?
I think it's going to be about 35-20. I don't think it's going to be the amount of drama that it was last week.
Okay. No, not as wild as last week's game. That was pretty crazy. Okay, so I can respect that pick. That's Frank Bonner on the Tulsa World joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Let's look over to Oklahoma State basketball here real quick. We got that win over Marquette. To you, how big of a win was that for this team?
I think it was big because of the way they won. I mean, if you look at last year, when they got down in that first half, last year's team would continue to make that lead be bigger and bigger, when Marquette went on that 13-0 run or that 12-0 run. The way that they responded with a 15-0 run of their own, that was big for them, especially for a young team that, when your back is against the wall, how do you respond? And, young teams, a lot of the young teams don't really respond well in that situation, and they did. So I think that win was big for them, and just being able to rally together and, punch Marquette right back and finish it in the second half.
We looked at their non-conference schedule, and you really circle, the Marquette game. And you say, okay, that was one that maybe they run into some issues. And it's not like it was just an incredible Marquette team like we've seen in the past, but still, it's Marquette. And then you look at the rest of the non-conference schedule. So to you, do they, with Oakland coming in, Oral Roberts, and Wichita State left, does Oklahoma State sweep their non-conference schedule this year?
I'm going to say yeah. The Wichita State game, I think, may be similar to the Marquette game in terms of, having to kind of grind one out after, getting down or something like that. But I do think they're going to win that Wichita State game too. And so I say, yeah, they run the table in their non-conference schedule.
If you could give me, your ultimate takeaways, you've seen this team now through 3 games, and the one against Marquette, obviously, that's a great win, really is, and they played well, they came back. But if you give me your takeaways from this team through 3 games so far, what would those be?
Well, one, Cade Cunningham is what you expected him to be. Two, this team isn't just Cade Cunningham. I mean, in every game, Cade Cunningham has been consistent, but he's had somebody else also, right there with him, shouldering the world, whether it was Rondell Walker or Bryce Williams. And so I think this team has shown that they've got enough players that can keep them in games. And if they need Cunningham to take over at the end, they can do that. And they're going to need that when they get into the conference schedule. So I think the biggest takeaway is that this team isn't just Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, that's absolutely been mine as well. We've seen a lot of other people step up, like you've said so far. And how about Rondell? I mean, he comes in off the bench and he can't stop scoring, and he's being aggressive when he's taking the ball to the hoop, and he's just looked really good so far. Yeah, and I think that's part of that is the beauty of having a freshman class that's headlined by Cade Cunningham, because teams have to focus so much on the fact that you've got a Cunningham on your team. Sometimes players like, Rondell Walker can get lost in the scouting report, and that allows him to have games like he has had. So I think he will continue to kind of be that spark at the bench, because you've got so many other players you've got to worry about, whether it's Cunningham. You can't forget about Isaac Likely, you know what I mean? And so you've got Farron Flavors, who came in with a big three-point shooting reputation. And so guys like Rondell Walker can pick their spots, let the game come to them. And, once players get in a rhythm in a game and, a couple shots go down, it's easier for them to make the next basket. And I think we see that in Rondell Walker. Do you see at any time this season Rondell kind of getting into that starting five at any point?
I guess that depends on. I mean, there may be a game there may be a couple games. Like last year, Boynton kind of shuffled the starting five a little bit when he needed to. I think there may be some games where he gets in the starting five, but I don't think he'll be a usual starter, just because I think it works so much better with him coming off the bench and giving them that spark. And so I think for team-wise, I think it may be, more beneficial to keep him coming off the bench, to let him have the game come to him. Sometimes when you put young guys in the starting lineup a little too early, the flow of the game changes for them, and then that kind of stunts their progression.
Frank Bonner here on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. So you mentioned Isaac Likely there, and we've kind of seen what his role has been so far this year. So through 3 games, he hasn't had to necessarily pour in a ton of points or be a huge a factor offensively, but he's done a lot in terms of adding the points where he needs to, making the intangibles, getting those done, the rebounds, the assists, defensive plays. But is that the role that you see him staying in this entire season?
Yeah, and I think that's the role. Boynton touched on it today. That's kind of who he is, and he said there'll be a time where it'll be his game to score 20 points or so on. I think because you have Cade Cunningham there, Isaac can take the game as it comes and do all the dirty work of getting the rebounds and pushing their pressure defensively. And I think his points will come because at the end of the day, he's still one of the best on the team of being able to, drive the ball and get to the rim. And so early on in the first half of some of these games where they get some more tougher opponents, you may need Isaac to score more, and when that comes, I think he'll deliver.
And we talked about, last thing here for you, we talked about the upcoming game with Oakland. Is there any way that this game ends up being close, or is this going to be an Oklahoma State blowout, basically?
I think it'll be a blowout. I mean, you may see it be close in the first 5 minutes or so, just because, depending on how teams start off, whatever. But I think after the first 5 minutes, it's going to be Oklahoma State's game from there on.
Frank, I appreciate it as always. You can get him on Twitter at Frank_Bonner2 from the Tulsa World. Appreciate him. Frank, thanks so much for your time, man, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, appreciate you having me on. I'll see you.
All right, Frank Bonner, Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Frank_Bonner2. Great stuff as always. Check him out at Tulsa World. Has a lot of good stuff as well that he writes about Oklahoma State basketball and football. Appreciate his time. We come back here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. We'll round out this first hour and take a look. One massive trade going down in the NBA that involved a former Oklahoma City player. And we got to tell you all about that. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster back after this.
Whoa. Staring as I go, I gave until my soul hurt, and never told them so. They're watching as I fall, somewhere down below.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster rounding out this first hour. Show today brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza in Perkins at the intersection of Highways 177 and 33. Right now, they also have your easy pickup of your favorite ice-cold beers and a huge selection of wines that you can pick up as well. Easy to grab on the way home. Also, you got to check out their deli. They have everything, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and right now with the dinner, because we're closer to that time more than anything, get pizza. They have straight-off-the-grill burgers right now, chicken strips, deli sandwiches, BLTs, potato wedges, french fries, onion rings, fried okra, and mushrooms, you name it. I mean, anything you want.
So good.
Oh, yeah. That's the best you're going to find. So go check it out at Ampride. They're open till 11, so you have plenty of time to grab an easy meal for dinner and to fill up while you're there as well.
It's only like 15 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
It's a short drive.
It is. Very short drive, super accessible, super easy. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. And Zach, last night we see some big NBA news. Russell Westbrook is on the move.
Yep.
And again, and I gotta say I'm surprised by the team he landed with, because there were a lot of talk, and it looked like it was actually going to somewhat be confirmed at one point that he was for sure going to end up on the New York Knicks. And now you find out, well, actually he's going to the Washington Wizards, and he's going to be traded for John Wall and a 2023 first-round pick. But here's the thing. John Wall hasn't played in 2 seasons. And so what does this tell you? It tells me that the Rockets were willing to get rid of Westbrook for a huge risk, and I think that it's kind of vice versa on the other side, because Washington was, I think, ready to get rid of John Wall. He had ran up his time there as well, so it was almost like an even kind of swap here of good luck, shaking hands type situation. And here's my thing with Westbrook. I remember exactly where I was when I heard that he was going to Houston. I was super excited for him, but I didn't really know how it would fit with James Harden, because those are two guys that need one ball in their hands all the time, and it ultimately didn't really work out at all. And here's the thing. Westbrook isn't a good shooter. I mean, plain and simple, he's really not a good shooter. I think he's a fantastic driver and a really, really good finisher, and he used to be lightning quick and decent ball handler. He's still really, really explosive. The thing that he does is he goes out there and brings people into the arenas, right? I mean, he has an entertainment factor that puts butts in the seats. And at this situation right now, there's not going to be any butts in the seats. But that was the main draw for him. It wasn't necessarily he was going to win you ball games all the time and be a next level elite guy, but he was going to have plays that were explosive and maybe shift momentum and that type of stuff. So there's a lot of things I like about Russell Westbrook, and he's my favorite player, but it would be irresponsible for me to not admit that he's part of the issue here as well. He's hot-headed, absolutely, and maybe not a great teammate, but just extremely, like I said, wildly entertaining every time he steps on the floor, wildly frustrating for a lot of people as well. He was actually the only reason, personally, this year that I watched any NBA in the bubble, because I couldn't take all of the rest of the politics and everything involved. I just wanted to see Russell Westbrook, so that's why I watched him. But we're also finding out now that James Harden basically said, hey, I would like to play with John Wall. So, he from the get-go, look, this marriage was flawed from the ground up with Russell Westbrook and James Harden, and James Harden gets what he wants. I mean, plain and simple. If it means that James Harden won't leave the Rockets, he's going to get what he wants, and he told the ownership, hey, John Wall, let's do it. for whatever reason, whatever he sees in John Wall, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a little bit more upside than Russell Westbrook. I'm assuming that relationship probably didn't end very well. But I also think that's another reason why some people don't like the NBA anymore, is because the megastars run the teams, and it's kind of annoying sometimes. But ultimately, I hope Westbrook succeeds. And I always love him, but I'm afraid that we're getting ready to see another former star kind of passed around the league, and he won't be able to find a home. But he will be the guy in Washington with Bradley Beal, and he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. That's what he wants. That's what he's most comfortable doing. But overall, I think this was kind of a little Yankee swap type situation.
Yeah, I love Russell Westbrook. I always have. He was frustrating when he was really young. And then he remained frustrating to an extent, but Oklahoma City is probably going to be the only franchise that ever benefits from trading away, like from they are going to be the only ones wherever Russell goes that's ever going to greatly benefit from Russell.
That's
because
true.
They have first round draft picks till the end of time.
Yeah.
And then they can use those first round draft picks to continue to get great players and this and that and this and that. I think you look at Houston and they're like, he's an MVP. We have an MVP. He's explosive. He used to play with James Harden. They're really good friends. This is going to work out very, very well for us. Russell Westbrook is, and like you said, he is very talented. He's incredibly explosive. He's gonna fill your arena night in and night out once this pandemic is over. But until Russell learns that, like, Russell is going to have the ball. He's Michael Jordan without the talent of Michael Jordan. Until Russell learns that he needs to pass the ball and he needs to create, like a team will not be successful with Russell unless they have another superstar. And even then, you look at what happened, the 3-1 lead they gave up to Golden State back in 2016.
Yep.
Which is just absolutely depressing to still think about.
It really is.
But until Russell figures it out, he won't. He's just going to be an explosive athlete that's going to go down as a well-liked player. His teammates love him. Fans love him. Management loves him. But he's not someone that's going to win you a championship on his own. It's just not going to happen. And honestly, I don't know how much longer it'll be before he winds up back in Oklahoma City. Really? I think he'll. I don't even know if he'll bounce around the league a whole bunch, but I could see him going to staying in Washington for a couple of seasons and maybe going somewhere else for a couple of 3 seasons. And honestly, I see finishing up in Oklahoma City. I can see him spending 5 or 6 years somewhere else and then coming back to Oklahoma City for a couple of seasons and then retiring because he's been in the league a while. He's got another 5 or 6 years before he completely drops off athletically and explosively. And then I think he comes back to Oklahoma City kind of in a Derek Fisher type role because Oklahoma City fans will always love and adore Russell Westbrook. It's the same as Steven Adams.
Sure.
Steven Adams will always hold a special place in Oklahoma City's heart. Same with Russell Westbrook. And I could see Russell coming back, in 5, 6, 7 years, spending a couple of seasons, and then getting his jersey hung up in the rafters, and that being the end of it.
And I would love to see that. I really, really would at the end of his career. I don't think it'll happen because I believe there were, when they cut ties, they cut ties. And I think that's kind of been the case with Russell Westbrook with the teams that he's been on, and it could be with Washington too. Not saying that there wouldn't be a situation where the Thunder are like, yeah, we'll give you a small deal, come over, and maybe we'll get something out of you like they did CP3.
The only thing I would argue with you on that is it didn't end well in Houston.
No, it did. No,
and it was a very amicable split. I mean, obviously we don't know what goes behind closed doors, But when he came back, the franchise recognized him with a video clip. The fans stood forever and clapped and hooped and hollered. So it seemed like a very amicable split, and that's the only reason I think that Russ will come back. I don't think there's any ill will with Russ.
Okay, well, and then with that, what he did, was, and it really helped out when when KD left, it was all Russ, and he really became the hero, because and that was kind of to the league. Because what KD did at the time, everyone's like, it's weak. You go to the Warriors, it's a super team, that's easy. And you kind of sold out everybody. And Russell Westbrook kind of fell into that and assumed that hero kind of mantra. And it was the same way that,
won an MVP.
Yeah, well, then you remember when they played the Warriors. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in sports. I thought it was like I was watching a movie. Yeah. When KD came back and Russ and him get up in each other's face and, are head to head. And Russ is telling him that he's coming for him. And I've never seen anything like that. I'll never forget that. And, I know the Thunder were getting killed at the time, but still, it was just that electric. There were so many things that Russ did that made me kind of, and not just his play. I loved his play, but things he would say and do. He never ever bought in to the whole hype of everybody else in the league. Like everybody would hype up, especially point guards. They'd hype up Steph Curry. That was at the time when KD went over there. Steph Curry was the best player on the planet and all this. And I'll never forget the best quote Russell Westbrook ever gave. They asked him about Steph Curry, what he thought, and he said, "Who?" I mean, it was classic Russ. He didn't care what anybody said about him. He wasn't afraid to stand up for him and his teammates. And yeah, so I think that that's one of the main reasons too. If Oklahoma City were to welcome him back, it's because maybe, like I said, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Maybe the franchise was kind of good with cutting him and kind of cutting ties and saying we'll see you later. But on the surface, it looks like we're bringing the hero back, and I think that would be good for ticket sales and all that, and it would be good storyline. And again, I love Russ. I really hope that he finds success, but I'm with you. He's going to have to, and then here's where the problem lies. He's going to have to accept a role as not being necessarily the guy that's going to go out there and consistently, that's been the problem too, consistently score you a ton of points, especially shooting the ball. When it comes down to it, he's going to have a tough time shooting, especially from beyond the arc. So with that being the case, if he never accepts it, I don't think he's ever going to accept that. It's going to be, I think I'm good enough, I can make this play, and ultimately, his career will be defined by the MVP that he won, which was an amazing season. I mean, it really, really was. The triple doubles, all that insane amount of production. And I hope he grabs one more before it's all said and done. I just don't think he's ever going to get to a finals. I wish he could. I wish he would. But he's not the guy that's going to join. The Rockets weren't a super team by any means either. No. They had James Harden, but don't get it twisted like they were some type of Warriors thing that's where Russ decided to pull a KD. No, not at all, and didn't work out. And I don't think he'll ever be that type of player. If he wins a finals, it's going to be on him helping out a team that wasn't supposed to win a finals.
No, absolutely. And I think you see that, or the fact that you put Russ on a team like it's not going to be Washington, it's not going to be Houston. If he goes somewhere with a young like a Thunder team, young, they have good young talent, they just and then that talent develops. If Russ is on a team like that, and they get a superstar in that, out of the draft, and that superstar 2 or 3 years in, and Russ is still there, then all of a sudden, maybe Russ, as a role player, gets that championship.
Get him on Twitter at ZLancaster91. I'm at the Patty Wheels. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network, hour number 2 is up next, and we're going to get into buy or sell. And then also coming up, we had some drama we're going to get to in the Pittsburgh and Ravens game. There's a little drama coming out of the broadcast booth as well. All still to come here on the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Keep it locked.
I don't wanna wait for our life to be over. You happen, but you take it how you left it. Need to give and take. Take your time, take me under. I wanna know, but you show me what I'm missing. In the plane out of Southern California, running in the streets.
It's the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network, hour number 2. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Get ready to rock and roll for the second hour. Buy or sell. Coming up here in just a minute. Show again brought to you by and Pride Travel Plaza in Perkins, intersection of highways 177 and 33. Open at 5 a.m. Monday to Friday and 6 a.m. Saturdays and Sundays, and they're open until 11 every night. Plenty of time to go in. Make sure you take advantage of their deli. It is awesome. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Breakfast, they have biscuits. You can get them with sausage or bacon, egg and cheese. Their biscuits and gravy are incredible. Donuts, cinnamon rolls, breakfast pastries. Anything you can want for breakfast, you're going to find it there. Also, you got a really, really big parking lot. That's big enough for all the motorhomes, 18-wheelers. Plenty of room for everybody there at Pride. Check them out again in Perkins, intersection of highways 177 and 33.
So don't get me wrong. I love breakfast food, right? Pancakes, waffles, omelets, it's all good. There's great restaurants, but even going back to when I was a little kid, there's, in my opinion, nothing better for breakfast than a gas station sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit.
Oh, no.
With a 20-ounce Dr. Pepper.
What is it about that?
Oh, man, I don't know. And I'll tell you, Pride has one of the absolute best biscuit sandwiches for breakfast. And I'm not just saying that because they're an advertiser. They are. But it is one of the best breakfast sandwiches out there. And it's so, so good.
Go and try it and make sure and the biscuits and gravy too. It's kind of the same thing there. Like you always find biscuits and gravy at a gas station. I don't know what the deal is about that.
Or breakfast pizza.
Yeah. Oh. What is the deal? We got to figure it out.
It's so good.
It really is.
Oh my gosh.
Go check them out. And while you're on the way, make sure you have it tuned to the Afternoon Sports Drive. There you go. We're going to start off hour number 2. We're going to get into it with this.
Are you buying?
I'd buy that for $1.
Or are you selling?
You pick up the phone and you sell.
This is Buy or Sell on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Make money, make money.
Buy or Sell, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster hanging out. My first one, I actually didn't get to this last one yesterday, so I'm kind of recycling, Zach. Okay, so forgive me on this, but I'm recycling. Okay, that's fine.
Good for the environment.
It is good. I'm doing a good thing here. I'm recycling here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Rondell Walker, he's been the talk so far. With Cade Cunningham, of course. Cade's gonna grab the headlines, and rightfully so, but man, Rondell, especially his last 2 games, has really, really stepped up and made an impact for Oklahoma State. And I even asked Frank the question I'm about to ask you, and that is, you buy or sell that Rondell is going to become a starter at some point this season for Oklahoma State basketball?
Buy.
Easy buy, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what he's done in the last 3 games. I get that Rondell was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school. He's a 4-star prospect by just about every recruiting publication out there. He was a top 100 prospect by just about every recruiting prospect out there. One of the top guards in the country. I think the number 1. Well, no, because that was Bryce Thompson's year, so he would have been the number 2 basketball player of the state of Oklahoma. He's just so good. But there's a really elite, select few high school basketball players, year in and year out, that come in and immediately make an impact. They are able to make that transition offensively, defensively, physically, mentally. The Kentuckys, the Dukes, the North Carolinas, the random player that chooses like a Dayton or a USC or Arizona or something like that. It doesn't happen often, but Rondell Walker, with what he's been able to do, I don't know if it happens before Big 12 play, but I think by maybe middle of January, if he continues this trend, absolutely. He's proved that he's a defensive stalwart. He's proven that he can go. Which, how many freshmen in the country play defense at a high level that actually want to play defense? There aren't many. But on the other side of the ball, he proved that he can go out there and he can steal. He can dish it out. He can score at almost will, inside, outside. Rondell is, and I tweeted it out the other day during the game. Rondell Walker is going to have an amazing career at Oklahoma State. It started hot. He is going to be absolutely fantastic. So I think I don't know if it's like you were talking to Frank, and Boynton hit on it as well. There's so many athletes and so much talent from top to bottom. Obviously, they're young, they're inexperienced, but as the season goes on, I think Bryce Williams is going to get some starts this year with what he did if he can continue that. Rondell the same way. I don't know with everyone on the roster. I don't know if it's going to be a day in and day out starter like Ice and Cade. But I certainly could see Rondell getting some starts this year. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to buy some spot starts as well. I don't think it's necessarily, like you said, a consistent.
Not this year.
Yeah, and that's not any knock to him. That's, as you said, the depth, and also you're looking at some game plans, especially when you get in the Big 12. There will be times where Oklahoma State is completely comfortable going small. And playing small, right, and playing fast.
Yeah, we saw it against Marquette.
Yeah, we did, and it worked. So it's something that's going to happen in the Big 12 as well. And that I think if Rondell stays consistent, and yes, Mike Boynton and the coaching staff would love to see what he's done translate into conference play. That would be huge. If he comes out against Big 12 teams, provides a spark off the bench first of all, and there's times too, where you don't necessarily start. But Rondell could be that guy that's basically a starter because he's going to come in really quick into a game, and he'll ultimately pile up a lot of minutes. And so I think he's going to play a lot of that role too. So I'm going to buy some spot starts. I was really impressed in the Marquette game with the way he was driving the basketball because he had a full head of steam, but he wasn't out of control. He was able to stay in control. He absorbed contact. He was aggressive. But at the same time, when you can balance that fine line of not just going straight to the hoop and hoping for, crazy shot to fall in, but actually staying balanced, getting yourself up in the air and getting yourself a good look at the hoop while absorbing some contact, it's impressive. It's impressive to see from a young guy like him, and a defensive, like you said, he's playing really well defensively. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to play for Mike Boynton if you can't play defense. So he's done all of that really, really well through these first few games. I really hope it sticks because you pair him with, and if you heard Frank, he said the exact same thing that we've said this whole time, is it's so good to see guys like Rondell fit in with Cade because now you can go so many other places. It's just really important to see. And if you throw in a guy like Rondell and he's scoring like he is, he's playing defense like he is, that opens things up so much for a guy like Cade Cunningham who will sneakily drop in 30, 35 points every now and again. It's going to happen. And you add what Rondell's giving you production-wise, it's a really scary Oklahoma State basketball team, and I think they're knocking on the door before too long of getting some votes for that top 25 and really pushing it. So I'm liking what I've seen out of him. So I'm with you. I'm going to buy that he does get some spot starts every now and again.
Absolutely. You talked about it a little bit with Frank. You and I talked a little bit about it. TCU on the season is averaging just under 200. I think it's 197 rushing yards per game. Oklahoma State has the defense as a bounce-back game, and they hold TCU to under that season rushing average by herself.
I'm actually really confident in Oklahoma State's defense this week. I really am. I know that they've been, like talked about, they've had a couple of down games, and that's fine. You're not going to get an elite defense always going to be able to be that elite every single week. They're going to run into some buzzsaws, especially in the Big 12. It's going to happen. And this is the case this year. So I'm not hanging my hat, too much on what Oklahoma State has done recently defensively. And TCU, as I said, they are somewhat limited what they can do on offense. I truly believe that to be the case this year. And it's not saying that Duggan isn't a great player, because I think he is, but you do ask him to do a ton when he's going to be your leading passer and rusher. That's a lot to handle against a very, very stingy Oklahoma State defense. So a lot of the rushing is going to come from him. And as I said, I don't know exactly who they're going to throw in, maybe a couple of different guys in to spy him all game. I'm sure Malcolm will have something to say about that. Eamon might as well. But whoever it is, and is going to be good enough. And as well as we talked about it with Tanner McAllister, said, look, we're coming in with a chip on our shoulder. We got something to prove here. I mean, if I'm a TCU offense, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear the Oklahoma State defense saying that they've got a chip on their shoulder and want to come in and show everybody that they're still legit. Like that's I'm like, okay, we're going to have to really, really play well against this defense. So I think they stuff up the run game. I'm thinking maybe they can hold them to around 140, maybe a little bit less than that. Mm-hmm. And if they do that, that means you're going to win that ball game, plain and simple.
No, absolutely. I'm going to buy it. I was thinking about 140, 150. With what happened last week against Texas Tech, you look at how well Rodarius Williams, you look at how well Trace Sterling, Colby Harvell-Peel, Tanner McAllister, Trace Ford, the defensive line. You look at how well those players have been playing this year, and even when you look at, he's been burnt a few times on deep passes, but Christian Holmes has done well. Same with Thomas Harper. When those guys are in the game, they've done well.
Yeah.
Eamon Ogbonibamiga, like you said, Malcolm Rodriguez. Those guys have played incredibly well this year, and they have such high expectations. I just can't see them giving up the type of big scoring plays that we saw last week against Texas Tech. Because if you eliminate those 3 big running plays, then that game is even if you don't allow them to score. Even if they're not 30 plus rushing yard for touchdowns, let's say you drop them at 20, 22, 25, you don't allow them to get in and you force a field goal, which we've seen this defense do consistently this year, is force field goals down in the red zone, then that Texas Tech game looks completely different. And I just, you saw them sell out so much to try to stop that run that they just bounced it out the other way, and all of a sudden there's one guy to beat, and he's at a bad angle, and it doesn't matter. I can't see this defense and Jim Knowles allowing that to happen 2 games in a row. So yeah, I think 140, 150 max, maybe a touch over 150, but right around 150, I think is what they're going to do.
All right, the next one I've got for you, sticking with Oklahoma State football, Tylan Wallace going over 100 yards on Saturday receiving. Buy or sell?
Yep, buy. Yep, I'm going to buy. I'm buying Tylan going over 100 the rest of the year.
Okay.
With how, Spencer hasn't been the best quarterback in, this season. He hasn't been his best self this season. But as we saw last year before he got injured against Kansas State, and we've seen it this year, he still makes some silly mistakes. He's making mistakes that he shouldn't make. The interception last week against Texas Tech, shouldn't have thrown that ball. But he's gotten better. Each week he gets a little bit better. TCU, they have a better defense than Texas Tech. But I think we see him similar to how he was last week, maybe a little bit better. And with Tylan, if there's a chance that Oklahoma State could make the Big 12 title game, Tylan is going to play.
Exactly.
Unless something crazy happens like Tevin, which, knock on wood, I don't think is going to happen. But Tylan is going to go out and he, you mentioned earlier this week, he comes down with balls that nobody comes down with. There's a select, there's 10 to 15 guys in the NFL that can bring down passes like Tylan Wallace does. He goes up, he can out jump any defender, he can contort his body midair, which is so incredibly hard to do. Completely disregard his own safety to come down with a pass, and he's going to do it. And so buy. He's going to put up 100 plus yards, and then whatever happens after these next 2 games, whether it's Big 12 title game and a bowl game or just a bowl game or whatever, Tylan's putting up 100 plus yards.
Yeah, the only time, and he may sit out a bowl game, but the only time he's not going to play again for Oklahoma State is if they lose one of these 2 games. I mean, and
I think if he sets out a bowl game, it's Heart of Dallas. If they drop a game, sure, and they play somewhere really crummy. Sure, I could see him setting out. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's the only thing that would happen there with me as well. I'm going to buy it too. I just think that, but the key is that Spencer's going to need to do what he did against Texas Tech in terms of allowing Tylan to get his, but getting everybody else involved too. I mean, we stress it all the time, but it just opens Tylan up so much because it forces the defense to recognize a couple of the other weapons. All of a sudden, you start dinking and dunking a little bit. You suck in the defense a bit, and that's all it takes. Tylan's going to hit you over the top. He's going to take the top off of defense, and as you mentioned, yes, he's so good at being able to get around a defender midair. Like that is a very rare skill set to be really good at, is getting up around a defender and catching a ball midair. That doesn't happen very often. He plays a lot taller than he is. He gets up in the air and makes plays a lot of guys are not going to make. So yeah, it's almost hard for him to not get 100 yards because he is going to run a ton of deep routes. And if Spencer is on target, or at least even close enough to give him a chance, he's going to come down with that football. So yeah, I'm going to buy it as well. What else you got for me?
The next one, and it's a bit of a cop-out. It's a bit of an easy one, and I think that it's probably a little unfair. Cade Cunningham wins Big 12 Freshman of the Year.
I think he has to. I mean, he's really, like I said, been quiet with the production, but man, it's always the presence of him out there changes everything. You know, it really does. The confidence that Oklahoma State has when he's out there is unmatched. And when he has been out there these first few games, yeah, the scoring wasn't huge against Marquette, but he played a big time role. Don't get it twisted. He really did in that game. And there are plays that he's made. I can count them in all 3 games so far this season, those that are NBA style plays. He's playing well above the rim when he gets up there. He is good at posting up, willing to post up, which is something a lot of big guards aren't going to do in college basketball. And the only other one that I think has a real shot, well, there's a lot of good freshmen, in the Big 12 as always.
Yeah.
But Greg Brown is really, really legit with Texas. And I sit here and watch this game, yesterday, watch Texas beat North Carolina at the buzzer. And in the Maui Invitational, and Texas is legit. I mean, they can shoot the lights out of the ball. They're super dynamic. They can get scoring from a lot of different places, and they play really good defense. So they're going to be fun to watch this season as well. They're going to be a tough team for Oklahoma State down the stretch, but I think we are just seeing the scratching of the surface for Cade Cunningham. He's going to go off on some teams, and very well could be a situation here against Oakland where he pours in a ton of points, and then in the Big 12, he's going to be ready to rock and roll. I don't really see anyone else knocking him off that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I'm buying, and you almost took the words out of my mouth. We're only seeing the tip of the iceberg with Cade. You see more and more confidence from him with each passing game. You see more and more comfortability. And I get we're only 3 games in, and these aren't these aren't world beaters, but these are tough teams. These are bubble teams and NCAA teams that are going to make the tournament. And I think that as that season progresses, Oakland at home is going to be such a great game for Oklahoma State across the board for every single person that gets on the court, because Oakland, they're Division I players, sure, but Oakland, Tom nailed it yesterday.
Yeah,
Oakland is not good.
Yeah,
they are not good. Which, for all those that are curious, Oakland is in Detroit. This is not California. Oakland.
Right.
Oakland's out of Detroit. So just a little helpful tip there. But yeah, Cade, once he gets to Big 12 play, Cade should just be absolutely ready to go. I think especially if we start to see him limit the turnovers, he still gets like Tom. I'm going to go back to Tom again. Cade still has that. I'm going and Cade played for Montverde, and Montverde plays only the best.
Oh yeah,
But the thing is that Cade was head and shoulders better than anybody else on the court at any given moment, and he could do whatever he wanted to do. And that's he's going up against a Cade Cunningham-esque player every single night. And I'm not saying that that Marquette has a Cade Cunningham or UTA or Texas Southern has a Cade Cunningham, or even TCU or Iowa State or who however. But he's going up against really good players night in and night out, and he needs to learn. And he knows it. I think in the heat of the moment, you get to a point where you're like, all right, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. But Cade, once he gets to the point where he realizes, and you know what, he might get to a point where he can do whatever he wants against whoever he wants. Yeah. But Cade, he needs to figure out the turnovers. But yeah, Cade's going to win. Like you said, the confidence level of everyone on the court goes up, and yeah, I'm buying Big 12 player, Big 12 Freshman of the Year.
Get him on Twitter at ZLancaster91. I'm at the Patty Wheels. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive, we'll take a look at the Ravens-Steelers matchup yesterday. Yes, the Steelers won. Yes, the Steelers are still undefeated. But are they the best team in football? Do they have the best chance to get to the Super Bowl? That, as well as some controversy coming out of the broadcast booth, all coming up.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my best, we'll begin with a 1 or a 2. Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm up to something. Woody-la-di-do, thank you all for coming. I hope you like the show, cause it's on a budget.
Back afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Steelers-Ravens yesterday, middle of the afternoon, just amazing. Loved every second of it. Even though it was a game where Big Ben threw the ball 51 times, and it was.
You think his shoulder's hurting today?
Yeah, I think so. But it was also a lot of, and it was hurting anyways. I mean, that dude he's gonna be hurting anyways. But 51 passes, and it was still somewhat of a boring offensive performance. And I think that is what has some people and maybe Steelers fans a little worried, is because this was a really banged up Ravens defense, and especially up front. You know, they were rolling out some B team guys. Everybody else was either injured or on COVID. The secondary not as much, but overall,
along with Tehran.
But overall, it was a lot of defensive issues there. And so when you look at the Steelers, you know, they also couldn't run the ball. Mm-hmm. And I know that James Conner was out, but Benny Snell is not a terrible back by any means, and the run game is concerning. Big Ben didn't look great, as we talked about, and you know he only managed 1 score and 4 red zone trips. And the interception he threw was really, really bad.
Oh,
that was just awful. There was nobody around. He threw it up like it looked like the Tom Brady we saw earlier this year, one of his interceptions where he's like, well, here's the football, and the defense came down with it. So there are things that are concerning to me for the Steelers because, yes, they're undefeated and their defense is very legit, but they also allowed a third-string Ravens quarterback to make it somewhat interesting towards the end there. So there's a lot of things that you can put in this game and say, are they completely the most complete team around, or is there some issues? I think there's places you can attack the Steelers, and I think they're vulnerable. So not a great game. If I look down the schedule again, to me, I circled that Bills game coming up in a couple weeks. And if the Bills come out and play like they have when they've been on this year and like they did earlier this year, and if Josh Allen is Josh Allen of this year, it's going to be a real issue for the Steelers, and I think they drop that game. I'm going to give a NFL pick and say I think that's the one that they're going to drop because they also lost Bud Dupree, and he's a big deal. You know, they lost him out last night with an ACL. He's out for the year. That's a big loss. He's a big part of that defense. So there are some issues with the Steelers. I would love to see, and we may not get to see it, obviously until the AFC Championship game, possibly. If it were Kansas City and the Steelers, I want to see how that shakes out. Because it could go one of two ways. Either it goes down to the wire because the Chiefs' offense runs into the best defense, or the Steelers put a performance like they did yesterday against the Ravens team that should have easily been beaten. If that happens, the Chiefs will run all over them, and it won't be close. So I think they have some things they got to tighten up because, yes, they are 11-0 or 12-0, whatever they are. That's great, but there are a lot of holes still on this team to me.
No, absolutely. I think I think you look at what they did. They held the Ravens. I don't think there was any doubt that they would hold the Ravens. They put up 14 points. Is an ugly game from the Ravens. Just not good. I mean, watching RG3 back out there, definitely a reason that he hasn't played in 2 years. But I think you're right. I think you look at the rest of the schedule for Pittsburgh, and I think they easily get past Washington. That's a gimme. You look at Buffalo, and it's at Buffalo. I get that it's not going to be a packed stadium, but if they have another game like they did against Buffalo and they can't move the ball, I agree. I think Buffalo's going to beat them. But then they beat the Bengals, they beat the Colts, but then they go up against a Browns team that's playing better than they have in just about any era of Brown football history, and they're not great, but what is it, 8-3? I think is what they are.
Yeah.
And it's in Cleveland. So if they play like they did yesterday, they play like that against Cleveland in January, they'll lose. They'll drop their second game of the season. But you look at it. Let's just say, and Tom, I'm sure you're loving this discussion if you're listening. Let's say it is.
He turned it off as soon as he knew we were talking about the NFL. What are you talking about?
Let's say it's Kansas City and Pittsburgh in the AFC Championship game. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's either going to be really close, and it's going to be 21-17, real low scoring type of game, or Pittsburgh is going to get blown out. It's 41-17, 41-21. It's not going to be a pretty game, because when you get to that point, where is Ben Roethlisberger going to be physically? Right. Is that offense going to be able to move the ball? And as much as I like Mason Rudolph, he was the first quarterback that I covered at the start of my journalism broadcasting career. So I really like Mason Rudolph. I think he's a good quarterback, but Mason Rudolph I don't think is good enough to beat Kansas City.
No.
And certainly whoever the third string is it still Devlin Hodges?
Yeah, it is actually.
He's not good enough to beat Kansas City. So physically, where is Ben Roethlisberger going to be? Because if he has even one more game mixed in there where he's throwing 40-plus passes, 45-plus passes, his arm's going to fall off, and literally.
Yeah, and I think he's still got some strength, but he's 38 years old, and when you throw 51 passes and it only results in one red zone touchdown, I mean, that's not great production. At the same time, we got to remember, it's a Steelers team that they let the Cowboys hang around.
Absolutely.
And the Cowboys were on their 20th quarterback. So they have at times looked vulnerable. And this season, they're going to really have a test against the Bills coming up. If they play like that, they're going to lose. And here's the thing, if Big Ben were to go down with some type of injury, yeah, it's over. I mean, I don't care who they're playing. You're going to have a tough time. That ultimately ended up being the case. And to
answer your second question, though, Pittsburgh has the best defense.
Yes.
Absolutely. There is no doubt that Pittsburgh has the best defense in the NFL. But overall team, I don't think so. The offense is good. They have moments. Chase Claypool has proven that he's absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. And Roethlisberger's a solid quarterback. But if we're talking about best team in the NFL, this isn't the NFL of 15, 20 years ago, where if you have the best defense, you're going to win a majority of your ball games, and you're probably considered the best You're probably considered the best team in the NFL. We are now in an era of college football, where Kansas City is the best team in college football because the offense can beat anybody.
Yeah.
I get that they lost to the Raiders, but they said it in the broadcast. I think it was Tony Romo. When you're playing in division, you're playing up against a team that knows you better than anybody else, and that's a hell of a rivalry.
Oh yeah.
Las Vegas, they're gonna take some games, but Pittsburgh is not they're 11-0. But that's on the back of a defense, but it doesn't mean, overall, Kansas City, their defense is struggling, but Kansas City's the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with you at this point as well. And, it was cool to see at the end of the game, James Washington, he made a really good play to kind of seal it. And
did you see Roethlisberger's quote about Washington?
I saw somebody tweet, and I can't remember if it was a tweet or somebody quoted either Big Ben or somebody talked about how he was the most underrated receiver, I think is what I saw in the league.
He said he needs to be on the field more, and that's not because of production from anybody else, but because he's earned it. He deserves to be on the field.
Yeah, and there was somebody that I think maybe was that quote right there that they tweeted and said, it was another player, said he's the most. Oh, it was Devlin Hodges, actually. Yeah. It was Duck, and he said he's the most underrated receiver. And I think he does have a lot of ability. It was cool to see at the end of the game, Big Ben throws it up in triple coverage, which, first of all, bad decision. Yeah. But James Washington, the pass happened to be in the right spot, but still bad decision. And James Washington made a good play to come up with it. But that wasn't the only drama. That wasn't the only drama. No. Chris Collinsworth is in the booth last night. By the way, I love Chris Collinsworth. He gets a lot of hate.
Agree.
Yeah, he gets a lot of hate. And I think he does a really good job. He explains the game really well. He picks up things a lot of color analysts don't. And he's really good at what he does. He had this to say last night about some of the fans that he met in Pittsburgh this week, and it made some people upset, believe it or not. So we're going to play this, and then Zach, I'm going to ask you, because Chris did apologize for what he said, and I'm going to ask you if an apology was needed for this. This is what he said.
As a fan, in particular the ladies that I met, they had really specific questions about the game. I was like, wow, you're just blown away by how strong the fans are here in this town.
So all the losers, as I like to call them, they get offended by everything. We're offended by Chris Collinsworth saying right there that he talked to some ladies in Pittsburgh that were Steelers fans, and he was blown away by how detailed these fans were with some of the questions they asked. And I can imagine what they. I mean, you get some female fans come up to you, and if they know it's Chris Collinsworth, which first of all I think is pretty impressive for a lot of people. A lot of people hear his voice, and if you don't consistently watch Sunday Night Football, you may not know even what he looks like. But they come up and they see him and say, it's Chris Collinsworth, and if they came up and said, hey, we have a really specific thing to ask you about this play or this formation or what the Steelers do. And he said, he's blown away by it. And so what people got mad about is, oh, my gosh, he's acting like women are not and don't know anything about football, and he's just completely shocked when they ask him about a specific thing and this and that. Everybody, on Twitter's mad. You got places like Yahoo Sports and a bunch of other outlets writing pieces blasting him for this. So he comes out and apologizes. Does this big apology about, I shouldn't have said it that way, and I respect women, and I respect women in sports and all this. So that with all that being said, and in hearing what he said, did that need an apology?
I'm not one of those people that get triggered or upset about every little thing, but I agree the fact that he apologized, because he certainly did not mean it the way it came off, but the way it came off, though, is that women like, oh, wow, I was blown away the fact that these ladies were, they had really specific questions. So it came off that women can't be knowledgeable about football. That's the way it came off. So I agree with the fact that he apologized about the way it came off. But I because he certainly didn't mean that, the way it came off. So I agree with the fact that he apologized for how it came out, but I think this was blown way out of proportion.
Oh yeah.
I think that, I agree with him apologizing, because I know quite a few women that are really, really not, more knowledgeable than I am at football. They're incredibly intelligent. They love football. And there's a lot of women across the country and across the world that are incredibly knowledgeable about sports.
Well,
so the fact that he, is like, I've met these women and they had really specific questions, and I was just blown away by that. I definitely can understand how that could be misconstrued as, my God, why that's ignorant. Why would you say that? So I think the apology was appropriate. But I do think that it was blown out of proportion.
See, I think when he said he was blown away, I legitimately believe that he was. I seriously doubt that there's a lot of times in any city he's been in that there's been females that have come up to him and asked him something extremely specific about football. I believe that. So when that happened to him, I'm sure he was like, wow, yeah, let me answer this for you. I don't think he was meaning anything in a bad way.
Right.
And the thing here is this. You get people on social media and you get people that write about it that are freaking out and demanding an apology. The only way, because I don't think he should apologize. I'll say that straight up. I don't think he needed to apologize. The reason I say that, and the thing that drives me crazy, the only way to get things like this to stop is that when somebody says something that makes a few people upset, the only way to get it to stop to where you are forced to apologize, or we're going to come after you, or we're going to cancel you, or whatever, is to just not do it. Is to just not do it. You stand by what you say and refuse to give in. You stand by your opinion. You shouldn't. In my thoughts here, you should never apologize for your opinion. But there are certainly exceptions. If you were to say something blatantly racist or sexist or extremely offensive to the mass majority of people, I'm talking extreme, just out of this. You can't say stuff like that. But things like
the Cincinnati baseball broadcaster.
Right. Yes, yes, that was bad. Yeah. But things like this, like he was trying to compliment them, for crying out loud. I think he was trying to compliment them. Like all these ladies came up and asked me this really specific, and it was cool and all this. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but to me, I can't recall. And I'm with you. I know a lot of and you watch it too. Female personalities and football personalities that are females that know a lot about the game. They do their research, and you can tell that they're where they're supposed to be. But I can't recall a female football fan ever bringing that up with anything that I've talked about with them, specific things like that. Not saying it doesn't happen, but I do believe he was legitimately taken aback And I just think this was another situation where, the mob was coming after him and he thinks to himself, oh my gosh, I got to apologize. And maybe it's, I got to apologize to make sure my job is still safe and all this. And there's pressure on him. But the only way I really believe you get things like this to stop is to stand by what you say.
Yeah, I don't think he meant it the way it was taken. But it was to me it was worded. I think it was worded incorrectly.
Okay.
I think if you want to talk about it, then you talk about it like that. I haven't had many women approach me to talk football. Mm-hmm. And that's his. That's what's happened to him. He probably hasn't had many women approach him to talk football. But and that's how you say it. I had these ladies approach me. This doesn't happen often. I don't have many women approach me, so it was really awesome to happen. Not, but the way he said it was like, yeah, these ladies had specific questions. It blew me away. Like, I could see how it was misconstrued, but I don't think he meant it that way for sure.
Get him on Twitter at ZLancaster91. I'm at the Patty Wheels. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive, we're going to tell you what we learned on this Thursday. That's next. Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Show brought to you today by Ampride Travel Plaza in Perkins. Check them out, intersection of Highways 177 and 33. They're open until 11 o'clock tonight, so plenty of time. Go grab some delicious food, gas up while you're there. Everything you need at Ampride Travel Plaza. Appreciate them as always. We round out the show. Zach and I, of course, we learned something. We're going to tell you that.
The day is coming to an end. Time to find out if these two got any smarter.
The question is, what did you learn?
Let's find out what the guys learned today on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Well, I learned something today.
Zach, what I learned is that it was a rough stretch for one college basketball team over these last week or so, and that is Greenville. Greenville is a Division III
those poor guys
college basketball team. And on Sunday, they allowed 173 points against Murray State. 173 points. Then they went on to Wednesday to play Illinois State and allowed 177 points. That's fourth most in Division I history, by the way, for Illinois State scoring that many points.
Like 5 games worth of points.
Oh, I know. It's insane. The Illinois State had 57 assists. That's most in a game in Division I history. That's shot
like 5 games worth of assists.
They shot 86.4% from the field.
Oh my God.
86.4%. They were 70 of 81 shooting. And they had that was the record because it's a minimum of 15 field goals. So they set a couple of records there. So you had Greenville giving up 173 against Murray State, and then they said, "How can we top it?" Oh, I know. Let's give up 177 to Illinois State. It's been a rough couple of games for Greenville. Again, a Division III school taking on a couple Division I schools, and it did not work out in their favor. So I learned that Greenville, they are pretty easy to score on.
It was poor guys.
Wow.
You need to win, Greenville. Then won't help you with the net, but my goodness. What I learned today, Michigan football. They found first season was 1879. They are 6th most all-time in games played with 1,344. They are first all-time in wins, although that is disputed, at 962. They have a 73% win percentage. And after Michigan's game against Maryland was canceled, the Wolverines will end their 2020 season without a home win for the first time in program history.
Wow.
Yikes.
It's been a disaster for Michigan this year.
There is no way Jim Harbaugh survives this year.
I wouldn't think. I wouldn't think. I don't know how you keep him around other than the name. I mean, the name's not even good anymore. That's all just ran to the dirt. I don't know if you saw, but the Michigan AD had a response to Kirk Herbstreit, by the way, and he kind of went off on him. Basically called him a fool. Told him he was pretty much stupid for accusing Michigan of even thinking about not going out there and playing against Ohio State. So there's a lot of blood here being boiled, and I think that if you look at it in the past, Michigan's never had any thing like this kind of pop up of an excuse. They have always kind of come and taken their beating from Ohio State. But they're certainly under the microscope this year because look, the game against Rutgers was the one I circled and said they were going to lose, and I was like an overtime away from being right. And the fact that Rutgers took them into multiple overtimes before Michigan pulled it out, it's just that was the cherry on top of wow, this team is not good.
Well, they lost to Penn State, and I'm attending Penn State in January, so I love Penn State, and they lose by 10. It's horrible. 2-4 on the year. I still don't think they play next week against Ohio State. It could happen, but I don't know. I guess I said that they there's too much money on the line, but I certainly would not be surprised if they didn't play.
Yeah,
not one bit.
I'm with you. I don't think they're going to. I really don't. So that's one of the things we're going to keep an eye on for sure. This has been the
and we didn't hit on it, but real quick, Texas Tech Matt Wells tested positive.
That's right. Yeah, you did say that. Yeah, he tested positive. That came out today. And what was the number you said of FBS coaches?
20.
20 that have tested positive. Wow.
Yeah.
How about that? That is, and then Zach and I were talking about that. It seemed a little low, actually, what kind of we expected. Of course, Nick Saban, I think he's tested positive like 10 times, so you can count him in there on that. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Big thank you to Amp Pride Travel Plaza sponsoring the show today. Check them out. Intersection of Highways 177, 33. I'll go get some dinner. He's still got 6 hours left before they close. You got plenty of time to get some dinner there. Short drive to Perkins. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. That's Zach Lancaster. I'm Patrick Wheeler. Back here tomorrow on Friday. Levi Peckinpah will join us then. We'll get into much more, round out the week here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.